Johnston, and my name is John Johnston. I'm a public affairs specialist for the Social Security Administration. I handle a rather large area for Social Security. Basically, if you take Pennsylvania and you cut out Pittsburgh and Philly, that is my service area. And really, my role at Social Security is to help spread information, education about our program. And we do all sorts of talks and seminars like this. This one is particularly devoted to retirees, and we're a longtime partner with Corey Higher Education. We are happy that they asked us to do this during the pandemic. We've been going out there for years doing pre-retirement seminars in person. So this is the first one that we've tried to do remotely. So this is new for us, and it's newer for Corey Higher Ed, and it's also newer for you guys. So, you know, the goal that I have at the beginning of any one of these is I want to make sure that anyone who took the time to attend and to learn about Social Security, that, you know, you leave with all your questions answered. So I have a pretty standard PowerPoint that covers retirement and how it goes, but I want to make sure that, you know, you take the opportunity to ask any questions that you have, and we'll make sure, you know, if you have questions when you leave, that's going to be on you, because I'm willing to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to speak up if something doesn't make sense, or yeah, you have any further questions. And if you could advance to my first slide, Brody, it's what is FICA, just so we're on the same page. So first thing, we all pay Social Security taxes, and we call those taxes FICA taxes. The current rate of FICA is 6.2%, okay, up to about the first $137,000. That's the Social Security part of FICA. There's also the Medicare part of FICA, and there's no limit on the Medicare part of FICA. So Social Security stops taxing at $137,000 this year, whereas Medicare will tax on every dollar, and the Medicare portion is 1.45%. Okay, these are the funds that are used to fund Social Security and Medicare. Your employer also matches that 6.2%, or that 1.45% of Medicare taxes. So a total of 12.4% is paid in to Social Security, and basically that's how we run and fund the Social Security program. If any of the listeners are self-employed, you pay the 6.2% rather than your employer paying it. So that additional 6.2% employer matches, a self-employed individual pays that themselves. Brody, if you could go to the next slide, please. We'll just linger on this for a minute. I always like to include just some information on how big we are, how many people we pay. These numbers are for December 2018, so they're actually a little higher right now, but we basically pay 60 million people a check each month throughout the United States. In Erie County, which I know most of the people who are on the line are probably from Erie County, we have about 55,000 Social Security beneficiaries. I've often said Social Security is the biggest economic factor in Erie County, with the amount of money that we send into Erie County every month with our 55,000 beneficiaries. If we can go to the next slide, please. Again, just some more information on how many people we're paying. Of those 60 million, 43.7 are retirees. Okay, and we're paying about $64 billion per month to them. There's also dependents of retired workers, 3.1 million dependents receiving $2.3 billion in monthly benefits. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so how do you qualify for retirement benefits? If I was in front of you live, I would be asking you that question and seeing how you answered. But it's pretty easy to qualify for Social Security retirement benefits. You really need two things. You need to have worked and paid into the system. And we actually call that becoming insured, okay? And you qualify or you gain insured status by working and earning credits. And in 2020, for every $1,410 you earn 1 credit or 1 quarter towards your Social Security. So when you've earned $5,640, you've earned your 4 credits in 2020. And that number changes a little bit each year. In fact, all of our numbers change every year. So the concept of earning credits and earning quarters with Social Security has been the same, quite frankly, since our program started in 1935. However, the amount that it costs to earn 1 credit changes each year with inflation, okay? So you need to have 40 quarters or 40 credits or 10 years worth of work. I was insured for Social Security retirement benefits by the time I was 26 years old. I started working when I was 16, and by the time I was 26, I had my 10 years worth of earnings in, or my 40 quarters in. The other thing you need to collect retirement benefits is you need to be 62 years old. And if you would flip to the next slide for me, please, Brody. What is the best age to start receiving retirement benefits? That's the biggest question that I get asked as a speaker, as a representative of Social Security. When should I start receiving Social Security? And quite frankly, I can tell everybody the exact date that they should start their Social Security. They just have to give me one piece of information. So if you can tell me when you're going to die, I can tell you when you should start your Social Security benefits. The point is that everybody has a different opinion. Some people want to start it right at 62 and take a reduced portion of their benefit. Some people want to wait to their full retirement age. And everyone has maybe a little bit of a different full retirement age depending on when you were born. So if you were born between 1943 and 1954, your full retirement age is 66. If you were born in 1955, your full retirement age is 66 and 2 months, 56, 66 and 4 months. And that goes up incrementally to anyone born after 1960. Our full retirement age is 67. So this chart that is up on the slide, on the PowerPoint slide right now, if we're using 66 as the full retirement age in this chart. So basically, a person that age with their full retirement age of 66 would get 100% of their benefits then. If they take it at age 62, they would get 75% of their benefits. Conversely, if they delay the benefit to age 70, we add on another 32%, 8% per year, 0.75% per month. So at age 70, when the benefit maxes out, an extra 32% will be added on. It really becomes a choice of, do you want more checks at a lesser value, or do you want less checks at a greater value? And it becomes a highly personal decision based on all sorts of factors. You know, do you have a job is the biggest factor. Do you like your job? Is your job killing you? Do you have enough money saved to be able to, you know, start collecting early? So these are the types of questions that all of our customers go through as they're trying to figure out the best date to start taking benefits. I will tell you, there is one absolute. You never want to file your claim after age 70. Your benefits max out at age 70, and if you're filing after age 70, you're essentially giving the government money back. Okay, Brody, if you could flip the slide, please. This next just gives more information on the percentage reduction if a person takes their benefits early. Okay, so I was born past 1960, so my full retirement age is 67. So if I were to take it at age 62, my reduction would be 30%. If you compare that to the person whose full retirement age is 66, their reduction at age 62 is 25%. And my grandparents, who their full retirement age was 65, their reduction at age 62 was 20%. Okay. You can flip to the next slide, please. So we have a retirement estimator online, and the retirement estimator is a calculator that can give you pretty good accurate estimates of your retirement benefit, or what your retirement benefit will be, and it's to be used in conjunction with your My Social Security account. So hopefully everyone out there has established a My Social Security account, and you're seeing the the list of earnings and your list of earnings and the benefit that you'll receive upon retirement or upon disability or upon death. It's just basically, it duplicates a statement that we started sending out to people probably a little over a decade ago, and then stopped simply because the cost was too great. And now that information is available online. The Social Security statement that you find in your My Social Security account, the estimates are calculated using the assumption you're going to keep working at the same level of the last reported earnings. The older you get, the more accurate your statement becomes. So I'm 53 years old. When I look at my statement, God willing, I make it to my retirement age, there's a assumption built into the statement that I'm going to keep working at the same level that I was working at my last reported earnings to Social Security. So that would have been last year's wages. The retirement estimator gives you the ability to alter some of those variables. So let's say you're 58 and you're going to stop working at your main job and you're going to take a part-time job that is going to cut your salary by 60%. You can use the retirement estimator to get a more accurate outlook of how that will affect your Social Security benefit. And Brody, if you would flip to the next slide, please. Also on our website, we have plenty of other online calculators that may or may not be helpful to you depending on your situation. We have a life expectancy break-even type of calculation that will show, how many months it would take you to live if you take your benefit late as opposed to early, when you break even with the money you lost by not taking it early. There's a WEP calendar, a windfall elimination provision calendar. Those are for folks who paid into different Social Security systems through their life. Maybe they were, for instance, firemen in Erie don't pay into traditional Social Security. They pay into their own retirement system. So they're subject to the windfall elimination calendar. So there's lots of, suffice to say, there's lots of different calendars online for all sorts of different situations that you may find helpful, as you're going down this road of retirement. If you would go to the next slide, please, Brody. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit mathy here over these next couple of slides. We talked about, what you need to be insured for Social Security benefits, how you need the 40 quarters of work, and you need to be 62 years old. If that's all you've done, if you've just done those 10 years worth of work, so if I were to stop working at 26, I was already insured by then, okay, my benefit would be very low, okay? When we're calculating the actual benefit amount, we look at your whole lifetime worth of earnings. So I got my very first job. My family lived in El Paso, Texas at the time. I was 16 years old, and I got a job at an ice cream parlor scooping ice cream. I made $2,530 that year. That still shows up on my Social Security statement. So we look at any job that you've had for your entire life where Social Security taxes were withheld, okay? We then index those wages for inflation. So the $2,530 that I earned back in 1985, if I'm lucky enough to make it to my retirement age, that might be worth $10,000. So we inflate the wages to a today's dollar value. We put the wages into today's dollar value, okay? We then find the monthly average of your highest 35 years of earnings. So if you've worked 45 years, we're going to drop your lowest 10 years. If you've only worked 25 years, we're going to put 10 years worth of zeros into your equation. So it's, when people ask me, it's another common question that I get asked, how do I maximize my Social Security benefit? What's the secret to maximizing it? And like most things in life, there's no really easy answer or easy or quick fix. It's really working and earning as much as you can over a 35-year period. And that's how you maximize your Social Security. You want to try to avoid 0 years if you can, because that could really pull down the average. Once we get your high 35 years, we sum those up and we divide it by 420, which is the number of months in 35 years. Okay, and we come up with what is called your averaged indexed monthly earnings, or your AMI. We love acronyms over at Social Security. In fact, we have a whole language that we speak over there. And that AMI is what you averaged in earnings during your lifetime after it's been indexed for inflation. Okay, now we don't give you that whole amount. In fact, the average person can expect to see about a 45% return on their Social Security, meaning that they'll get 45% of what their AMI is. A higher earner may only get 25% of that, where a low earner, people like my grandparents who quite frankly lived from paycheck to paycheck and then from Social Security check to Social Security check, they may get up to 60 or 70% of that. And if you flip to the next slide, Brody, this is where it starts to get a little bit mathy. So if you're not good at math or it just bores you, you can take a break during this slide. What we do here, and this is an example of our benefit formula, the average monthly earnings in this example are $6,000, okay? And in that example, a person who averaged $6,000 a month during their life, their monthly benefit would be $2,400. We take 90% of the first $960, okay? So that's 864. We then take 32% of any earnings over 960 through $5,785. So that's 4,825, and 32% of that is 1,544. And then we take 15% of any earnings over the 5,785. So that results in $32 in that in this example. So the monthly benefit is $2,400, and I'm looking at my slide now, and it says 2,440. I'm going to pull my calculator up here real quick, Brody, and just add those numbers up. 960 plus 1,544 plus 32. Yeah, so it's the correct answer is 2,440 is the monthly benefit for a person who has $6,000 in monthly earnings. And if you're looking at this, this is where the social in Social Security comes from. It's weighted more heavily to pay a higher portion of wages for a person who has lower income, where a person who has a higher income, they're getting a lower percentage of return on the higher parts of their income. So everybody's getting that 90% of the first $960. Even upper earners are, but for people like my grandparents, that really is significant because we're supplying living money for them. So you could basically have somebody, if you look at this equation, who averaged $900 per month during their lifetime. That's pretty much living in poverty. If you lived off of $900 per month, you're barely above the poverty line, quite frankly. If that person files for Social Security, they're going to get an $810 Social Security benefit. Okay, so again, you may have heard or seen the news, like Social Security is a program that keeps seniors out of poverty. It really is. Quite frankly, the reason I do a whole talk in the history of Social Security and why we're around and where we started, and globally where we started, and really we started to pull seniors out of poverty, to keep seniors out of poverty when they couldn't work anymore. If we could go, well, actually, this is a good, maybe just have a short little break to see if there's any questions up to this point, Brody.
We haven't had anything in the chat yet, but just a reminder, down there at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat button that I will put a message in if it's not showing up on your screen currently, that you can type in at any point during the presentation, and I'll relay that to our presenter.
Thanks, Ravi. So if we have no questions so far, we can go to the next slide, please. So some people, well, when we talk about retirement, you know, it's hard to have a universal definition of what retirement means, but I think everyone can agree part of that definition is a decrease in your work activity. So when you file for retirement benefits, Social Security measures if you're actually retired or if you're partially retired, and we look at your earnings. We do that by looking at your earnings. So if you're fully retired and you're not working at all, you just basically file for Social Security and you get your full Social Security check. However, if you're still working, one of the questions that you'll encounter on the application is, you know, are you working and what do you plan to make? Okay. If you're under your full retirement age, you're allowed to earn $18,240 per year. And then for every $2 you earn over that amount, Social Security will withhold $1 from your Social Security benefit. So if you file a claim, let's say to start with January, and let's say your Social Security benefit is $1,000 per month, and let's say you earn you're going to earn $28,240 in the year. What we would do is we would subtract the $18,240 out of that. That leaves a balance of $10,000. We divide that by 2. That leaves $5,000. So how we would pay out that claim, since it's a $1,000 benefit, we would withhold the first 5 months of benefit. So we would hold January, February, March, April, May, and would start paying the claim with June at $1,000 per month. We understand that some people can't project their earnings exactly. We deal with a lot of people who are in commission-based sales jobs or in employment that varies season to season. So we ask people to give us the most accurate estimate possible. Specifically, the words we use is to bargain with us in good faith. In other words, try to give us accurate estimates. You can change your estimate during a year. So if you retire in January, let's say you stopped working completely, but then in May you get called back for consulting work, you'll want to call and let us know that, because that's going to impact how we pay you, okay? If at the end of the year, so the year is now over, if you estimated too high, so your estimate, now you've got your W-2 or the IRS has sent us, or your employer has sent Social Security your wages, when that happens, we're going to compare that to what you told us. And if you estimated too high, you're going to be underpaid during the year, and we're immediately going to refund money to you. If you estimated too low, you're going to be overpaid, and so you're going to get a letter from us asking you to pay money back, okay? So again, try to get the estimates accurate. If it changes during the year, you can update it. And we do send a letter out to every one of our customers, active customers, between August and October, who were working in the previous years, that basically says, hey, you were working last year, you reported this to us, what do you expect to earn next year? And that reminds our customers to get an estimate on the record so that, you know, we can adjust to Social Security and hopefully avoid overpayments and underpayments. The year that you reach your full retirement age, there's a second tier of earnings, and you're allowed to earn around $48,000 during that second tier of earnings. And specifically, the way that works, my birthday is in September. So if I'm lucky enough to reach age 67, which is my full retirement age, from January through September, I would be allowed to earn that $48,600 figure. If my birthday was in March, I would be allowed to earn that much from January through March. So the second tier of the earnings test is different for each person depending on when their birthday actually is, depending on, you know, the month that their birthday falls. And you may have heard people say before, even if you're not retired from work, check in with Social Security, potentially file a retirement claim in January of the year you reach your full retirement age. Now, the reason why they're saying that is because of that increased amount of earnings in the second tier. So some people who didn't think they were going to be eligible could be eligible. You could be earning $100,000 a year, and let's say your birthday's in June. Well, you might not exceed that $48,600 figure by June, which would mean you could earn $100,000 a year and still collect all of your Social Security checks. Okay. Once you're past your full retirement age, so if I make it past September of my 67th birthday, I'm allowed to earn as much money as I can or as I want with no reduction on my Social Security. So at that point, there is no limit to the earnings. And one of the PDFs, this is one of our confusing topics that our customers tend to get confused about. I supplied some PDF. Usually, if we were doing this in person, I would bring publications that supported what I was talking about, and you could walk out of the presentation with all these different Social Security publications. We have about 150 different publications on a bunch of different topics. I've provided Corey Higher Ed PDFs of those, which will be distributed to you guys. And one of them is on, it's called How Work Affects Your Benefits. And it basically addresses this slide right there. So if you felt like you didn't quite get it, there is that publication. Brody, if you would flip to the next slide, please.
Sure. Just real quickly, John, a couple questions from the chat. One of the questions that came through, this is the full question, is interest earned income?
No. We're just looking at your earnings from your work or self-employment. If you file a Schedule SE or a Schedule C, passive income that's reported on a 1099 does not count towards the Social Security earnings test. So you could have $1 million a year coming in interest, and I hope everybody does, and we wouldn't care about it at all, and we would never even ask you about it.
And then the second question here overall may be one more appropriate for the end for you to answer maybe a little bit more fully. Shirley said that when she tried to file online, it keeps taking her to the disability application. So maybe when we break out of the presentation here at the end, you may be able to address that more head on, more specifically if we take a look and pull up the website.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of address that now. It actually kind of applies to the next slide. So if you flip to that slide that has to do with spousal benefits, you know, if you've been to our webpage, you'll notice there's several applications on our webpage. We have an application for disability benefits. We have an application for retirement benefits. We have an application for Medicare only. There's a spousal only application on there. And quite frankly, there's really only one application. We just put a different title on it so that people can start in a different path. It's a smart application that takes you down the path based on how you answer your questions. So if you were under 62 and you tried to file a claim, well, first off, the system would recognize that you're under 62, and it would ask, are you unable to work because of a disability? And if you answered no to that question, well, there would be no other path for the person to go because there's no retirement benefits or there's no disability benefits. So if a person who's trying to file for retirement benefits gets onto the disability path, they would have to go backwards and see how they answered that question about being disabled and unable to work, because the application, again, you don't have to have a PhD in Social Security to file an application. Really, all you have to do is know that you want to file an application, and then when you're ready to file that application, do so, and the application will take you down the right benefit path based on how you answer the questions. So that's how I would invite that person to revisit the beginning of the application and go back to look to how they answered that question. And that kind of ties into spousal benefits, which, you know, a lot of people ask about spousal benefits, and I'm going to go over the calculation with it. It gets really confusing, especially when I'm not on a whiteboard actually like demonstrating live calculations. But suffice to say, you don't really need to know about spousal benefits. You just need to know who you're married to. And there's a question on the application, who are you married to? Have you ever had any previous marriages? And we automatically screen for spousal benefits based on the answer to that question. And we automatically screen both ways. So not only are we screening your spouse for eligibility on your record, we're also screening you for eligibility on their record. So a spousal benefit is a bi-directional computation. Spouse is a gender neutral term, so it refers to benefits both for the person who's filing and the person who's mentioned on the application. Specifically, what we're looking at in the calculation is for all of our computations are based on a person's full retirement age dollars, okay? So if a person has a full retirement age benefit, we'll say the higher earner of a couple has a full retirement age benefit of $2,000, okay? We'll take 50% of that, use nice round numbers. So the basis for spousal benefits is $1,000. If the spouse, the lower earning spouse, has a full retirement age benefit that exceeds $1,000, they would not be due any money because their full benefit exceeds 50% of their spousal benefit. If their full benefit was $800 in that example, they would get a $200 spousal benefit at their full retirement age. And if they took it early, let's say they took it at 62, they would get $750 on their own record, and then $150 as a spouse, right? Using that 75% rule, they get 75% of their $1,000 and then 75% of their spousal amount. So if a person had a $999 Social Security benefit at their full retirement age, that means they'd get a $1 spousal benefit at their full retirement age. If they had a $1 benefit of their own record, they'd get a $999 spousal benefit. So the spousal benefit computation is dependent on the individual's own full benefit. And it can get confusing, especially if people file early and they're using different numbers to try to calculate. One of the most common questions we get is people come into our office, usually after they filed their claims, maybe they're now in their early 70s, and they've talked to their neighbor and they wonder why they're not getting 50% of their husbands, where the calculation works the same for everybody. And just mentioning your spouse, that calculation will take place. So you could have an example where, a husband's or a higher earner's benefit is $2,000 per month. Spouse's benefit is $1,000 per month. They filed early. They're only getting $750, and they wonder why they're not getting the full 50% when maybe their neighbor filed later and is getting the full 50%. So, spousal benefits are tricky. And again, your responsibility with us is to just know who you were married to and tell us who you were married to on the application, and then we'll automatically run that calculation. This same rule, if we go to about to jump into this before I change the slide. So if you go to the next slide, Brody, I'm sure there's some people out there who have divorced spouses. The exact same rules apply for divorced spouses as regular spouses. The only difference is for divorced spouses, the duration of marriage is 10 years, whereas the duration of marriage for regular spousal benefits is 1 year. So if you know somebody who's in a bad marriage for 9.5 years, tell them to hold on for that 6 months, and they might be able to get a benefit out of it. The scope of the Social Security application, and this is really what we're talking about, covers many more benefits than we're possibly talking about. A person may go in thinking they're only filing for their retirement benefit, okay? But in actuality, every question on the application is designed to maximize a person's Social Security benefit. So we ask about spouses, we ask about ex-spouses, we ask about minor children because minor children are due benefits on parents' records. We ask about disabled adult children. Those are children of the number holder, of the worker who became disabled before the age of 22 and remain unmarried. The Barber National Institute, great facility that takes care of, intellectually disabled individual, they have about 450 people under their care at any given time. A lot of those folks are disabled adult children. In a lot of cases, their parents have been gone for years, and they still continue to receive a Social Security benefit based on their parents' contributions to Social Security. We're not welfare. Those kids are not on welfare. Those kids are on getting a disabled adult child's benefit based on contributions from their parents. So I've always said I'd take a lot of solace that if I did have a disabled child, I would know that they would be taken care of, long after I'm gone. We even get into other types of benefits on the application. My mom's a widow. My family, I spent my childhood in Canada. So my family grew up in Canada, or I grew up in Canada, and my dad was also insured under the Canadian Social Security system. And when my mom filed her widow's claim, one of the questions on the application is, did the number holder ever work under a foreign Social Security system? And we have about 27 different reciprocal agreements with countries around the world where if you're insured under their system, we'll assist you with that claim also. So when my mom filed her widow's claim, Social Security helped her get the additional $250 or so from her Canadian widow's benefit that she was due. We have special rules for railroad boarders. So if you've worked for the railroad board for over 10 years, that's going to be a factor in your claim. The weirdest question on the application, and you will encounter this question when you fill it out. We ask people if they've ever been a Japanese internee. Now, we asked that question because during World War II, we took Japanese Americans, they were American citizens, and we put them in internment camps so they couldn't work. So I've never seen anyone answer yes to that question during my entire career, and I've been around Social Security for 25 years now. However, if I was a claims rep in Seattle, Washington in the 1970s or late 1970s, I'm sure I would have seen people answer yes to that question. We have special rules for the military. So again, all the questions on the application are designed to maximize a person's income. And really, all you need to do when you're filing your retirement application is figure out when you want to turn the water on, when the month you want to start it, and then file the application. And whether you file an application using our online system or whether you call us for an appointment and have us take that application, the scope of the application remains the same, that you may be applying for many benefits that you're not even aware of. Again, you don't have to, a little saying that I carry around, you don't have to have a PhD in Social Security to actually apply for Social Security. And the fact that you guys are attending a seminar like this, gives you a leg up on understanding what's going on. And hopefully, you'll now understand why we're asking, seemingly unusual questions on the application. If we can go to the next slide, please. I kind of talked through this one already as far as benefits for children. So we'll just linger on this one for a moment. And if we go to the next slide, this is really the concentration on retirement, but I always throw a couple of survivors slides in or just give a little information about survivors benefits, because inevitably I have a widow or a widower, or someone is going to be a widower or a widower in the near future. So it just helps them with that. Basically, survivor benefits work very similarly to retirement benefits, where your auxiliaries can be paid, your children and your disabled children. A widow or widower can start receiving benefits at age 60 as opposed to age 62. So there's a little bit earlier eligibility for widows and widowers benefits. And if the widow or widower is disabled, they can actually start receiving benefits at age 50. Okay. Now, if you flip to the next slide, please, Brody. This may be the, be the next slide. So basically, when my mom filed her survivor's claim, her widow's claim at age 60, she got 71.5% of my dad's benefit. It works like retirement benefits, that the longer you wait the more money that you're going to get. So if my mom would have waited to her full retirement age of 66, okay, she would have received the full 100% portion of my dad's. There's also no delayed retirement credits for survivors. So if my mom would have filed after age 66, there would have been no additional gains like we see with retirement benefits. But really, if you go to the next slide, this is the most important thing that you need to know about survivors benefits. Basically, a widower can change their entitlement one time during their lifetime, okay, and not carry their original reduction factor with them. So what that means, and I'll use my mom as an example again. She's out in Denver, but she absolutely loves it when I use her as examples for Social Security talk. She took 71.5% of my dad's benefit when she turned 60 years old. My mom was also a teacher for many years, so she was insured as a educator. When she turned 70, so she had been receiving widow's benefits for 10 years. She now turns 70. She files a claim on her own Social Security record, getting 132% of her own benefit. So she took the widow's benefit early, let her own benefit max out, and then switched over to her own retirement benefit. She could have also done it in reverse. So she could have taken the age 62 retirement benefit first, received 75% of that, and then when when she turned 66, she could have then turned around and filed a claim on my dad's record and got the additional amount on that side. The general strategy is, if you can, you want to take the lower benefit first and live with that and let the higher benefit max out. And now my mom, who's 74 now, hopefully she'll live a long life receiving that higher benefit that she filed for. I'm going to just take a brief breath, Brody, and just check in to see if there's any questions.
We haven't had anything new in the chat at this point in time.
Excellent, thank you. So if we can go to the next slide.
Oh, we just had one pop in, John. We'll get that real quick while I switch the slide. Jeff asks, if my ex-spouse files for my benefit, does it reduce mine?
No. So any auxiliaries filing on a record, the A or the number holder always gets paid first. Now, to kind of give a little bit of a additional answer to Jeff's question, there is what we call a family maximum, and that's the maximum that we're allowed to pay out on any given Social Security benefit. And where we usually see that come into play is with kids. So let's say and quite frankly, we usually see it with younger claims. So maybe a disabled worker, say a disabled worker files at age 40 and still has they have 4 minor kids in the house. Each of those kids is due 50% of the worker's benefit, but there's a maximum we're allowed to pay out to the family, okay? So let's say the 4 kids, let's say the number holder's benefit is $2,000 per month. So each one of those kids would be due $1,000 per month. If we paid, $2,000 to the worker and then $1,000 to each of the kids, we'd be paying $6,000 to that household. And there's usually there's a maximum that we're allowed to pay out on any given claim, and we call that the family max. So in that example, if there was a family maximum, let's say of around, just use round numbers, $4,000, okay, each one of the kids couldn't get $1,000 because we're only allowed to pay, $4,000 total for the family. So each child's benefit would be reduced to $500. So we'd pay out a total of $2,000 to those 4 kids, and then the number holder would receive $2,000. The number holder's benefit, the worker's benefit, is never reduced. It would always be the auxiliaries that are reduced when the family maximum comes into play. And just to follow up on that example, as the kids age off of benefits, meaning they turn 18 or they graduate from high school, essentially the other kids' benefits would increase. So after the first kid drops off, the other kids' benefits would increase to what, $667 a piece. And then after the second child dropped off, the kids would go up to the maximum rate of $1,000 per month, and then we'd be paying that family max out to the family. So if we're on the taxation slide now, I think, Brody, is that the one that you're on?
That's correct.
Okay. So you might have to pay taxes on your Social Security benefits. We really don't answer. We often get a lot of questions from customers, or I'll get a question from a customer who will bring me all this information and they say, I want to know how much my Social Security will be taxed. And we really don't provide that type of information or service. We just let you know that your Social Security could be taxed. It's the IRS function to collect taxes. And most of those programs that you can find, TurboTax or, sorry if I can only name one, but I believe there's several of them out there, we'll also be able to run it through to run your numbers to tell you, how much of your Social Security would be taxed and what amount you'd have to pay. But, just to go through this slide real quick, if you're filing as an individual, okay, and your income is between 25 and 34,000, you may have to pay income tax on up to 50% of your benefits. If it's more than 34,000, up to 85% of your benefits may be taxable. That doesn't mean they're going to tax your benefits by 85%. It means that 85% of your benefits may be taxable. Okay. If you file a joint return and you and your spouse have combined income between 32 and 44, you may have to pay income tax on 50%. And then over 44, up to 85% of your benefits may be taxable. And if you're married and file separate tax returns, you'll probably pay taxes on your benefits. And if you go to the next slide, we'll just linger on this for a minute. Okay. And if we go to the next slide, please, Brody. So we've got to the benefit portion of it, the cash portion of the seminar. We're going to talk about Medicare now. Medicare comes with Social Security, and it comes with it when you're filing a Social Security application. Medicare can be complicated. You get a lot of outside parties advertising to you when you start to get around age 65. You probably get bombarded with books for different sales. Okay. Now, as it exists today, there's 4 parts to Medicare. There's Medicare Part A, and that's the hospital insurance. And there's Medicare Part B, and that's the medical insurance. And generally, when a person says, I have Medicare, what they're saying is, I have Part A and Part B of Medicare. That's the standardized part of Medicare. My mom, who lives out in Denver, has the same Part A and B as folks have here in Pennsylvania. So it's standardized across the United States. Everyone has that same coverage. Some people refer to A and B as original Medicare. And when Medicare started in 1965, that's when A and B started. Again, A is free. Part B costs $144, $144 and some change per month. And in 2021, they just announced the new Part B amount, and it's going to be $148.50. Okay. Part C and D, okay, the Medicare Advantage plans and prescription drug plans are not administered in the traditional way. Those are private insurance companies that sell plans to customers who are on Medicare. So if you buy a Part C Medicare Advantage plan, essentially what you're doing is well, first off, you have to have A and B to buy a Part C plan. That's the starting point. That's the basis for all Medicare. And if you buy a Part C plan, essentially what you're doing is you're buying an additional private policy that will cover all your healthcare needs. So nothing will be billed through Medicare. Instead, Medicare will pay the Medicare Advantage plan a certain fee each month, and that Medicare Advantage plan will then take care of all your needs. Medicare Advantage plans are not one size fits all, whereas, A and B is the same for everybody. Medicare Advantage plans differ. There's about, currently in Erie County, and it changes, so don't hold me to these numbers, but there's probably 26 different Medicare Advantage plans that you could buy into. Not 26 different companies, because companies may offer 2 or 3 levels of plan, okay? And that's really what you're getting marketed. That's really the marketing that you're getting. The booklets that you're receiving are folks who want you to buy a Medicare Advantage plan. There are whole seminars on Medicare, quite frankly. And, if you continue to have questions, particularly on Part C and D, there's a great organization called Apprise, APPRISE. And what Apprise does is they do Medicare counseling with our customers, because Medicare is a separate agency from Social Security, and there's not a Medicare office in every town. In fact, our closest Medicare office to us here in Erie County is out in Philadelphia. So what CMS, the agency that runs Medicare, is they contract that work out, and every county in Pennsylvania has an Apprise group, and really their only function is to help out Medicare beneficiaries make the best choices with all these private plans. I would highly encourage you to either, talk to someone at Apprise, or if you have a trusted insurance agent, talk to them, or maybe you're lucky enough to have your employer be one of the folks who his employer offers some sort of advantage plan or supplement plan in your retirement, and then make sure you work with your employer before you buy. I'm not saying take the employer plan, but listen to their offer before you just go out into the marketplace and buy a plan. Prescription drug plans operate similarly. They are, plans that are sold by private insurance companies that cover prescription needs for seniors or people on Medicare. And, again, there's a lot of different plans out there, and it's not a one size fits all. It really has to do with the type of drugs you're taking. There's different formularies for each plan, so it's best not to just randomly pick a plan. Sometimes a person will ask me, hey, John, I'm not taking any prescriptions at all. Should I buy a Medicare prescription drug plan? And, this is insurance. Like, that's the first thing you have to remember. You're now dealing with the insurance world. If you don't buy it when it's offered at age 65 or when you first get onto Medicare, you could pay a higher cost for it later on. So even if you're not taking any prescriptions, you still may want to investigate buying it. If you inevitably think you're going to take prescriptions and going to need it, you buy insurance, quite frankly, before you need it, so it's there when you need it. And you don't want to have to pay more for it if you purchase it later on. My advice to those people is to buy the cheapest plan. You are able to change your plan each year. Okay, so if your prescription needs change during any given year, you can change to another plan the following year. Okay, but A and B are very different than C and D as far as how they operate, how they're structured. And Brody, if we could please go to the next slide. So, when Medicare eligibility happens, really there's only 5 ways that a person can have Medicare. And if they're not in one of these 5 categories, they won't have Medicare. I mean, there's no other way to get Medicare other than one of these 5 categories. And I'm going to spend most of the time talking about age 65 Medicare, but just to mention the other ones, if you're after your 24th month on Social Security disability, you'll receive Medicare. If you have ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, or end-stage renal disease, you can bypass that 24-month period and go on to Medicare more quickly. And there's also was a settlement for some workers who were removing hazardous materials and got all these terrible cancers as a result of their work. They were also allowed to go on to Medicare before that 24-month period. Okay. Now, speaking about the, if you would go to the next slide, please, Brody. Most people will take Medicare when it's offered. The one exception to that is if you are still working or your spouse is still working and they're covering you under their employer group health plan. In that case, you don't want to take Medicare Part B because it costs you $144 a month or so. And essentially, your employer group health plan will be your primary plan. And if you purchase Medicare, you'll essentially be buying what is called a dual primary plan. So nothing will actually go through Medicare. It'd just go through your employer plan, yet you'd be paying for Medicare to do nothing. For those folks who are covered under an employer group plan that is based on active employment, meaning it's not a COBRA plan, it's not a retiree plan, it's not a disability plan, it's based on you going to work every day, you can delay your Part B enrollment indefinitely. We have, within the last 5 years or so, folks in one of our offices around Pennsylvania assisted a 93-year-old woman with signing up for Medicare. Now, she had kept her job. It had eventually gone to part-time work, and she had retired from this job when she was 93 years old, and they had kept her on the health plan the entire time. And so 28 years after her Medicare date, she was able to get on to Part B, quite frankly, with no problem at all, because she had those two elements of being employed and being covered by the employer group health plan. I'm going to tell a little story about my uncle, who's now deceased. And by the way, my uncle, my people are from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, and my uncle was one of those people who wore the top hat and carried the groundhog around. So I come from groundhog stock. Okay. Now my uncle, he turned 65, and my aunt was working at the bank. And at that time, he was covered under her employer group health plan based on her employment at the bank. So he was able to not take Medicare at age 65. Fast forward 2 years, my uncle is now 67. My aunt is 60. My aunt gets diagnosed with breast cancer, and she has to leave her job at the bank. The bank tells her that she's going to continue to cover, or the bank's going to continue to cover her and my uncle, okay, and they'll cover they'll cover them until my aunt turns 65. So the next 5 years they'll cover them. At that time, my uncle should have gone to his local Social Security office and enrolled in Part B. Instead, he did nothing. He just relied on the information from the HR department of the bank, and he stayed on the employer group health plan. Fast forward 5 years, my aunt is now eligible for Medicare. She gets on to Medicare, no problem. She's 65. My uncle tries to apply at his local office, and they reject his application because even though he had the employer group health coverage, it was based on a disability plan, not a retiree plan. So he had to wait instead for the general enrollment period. He was not eligible for a special enrollment period. Instead, he had to wait for the general enrollment period. And that's every January through the end of March. And his coverage became effective the following July. So this happened in November. So there's a 72-year-old man who had to go with health coverage from November through July. He also paid a 50% higher premium. A penalty was assessed because, again, he didn't buy it when it was first offered. He waited 5 years. So Medicare operates like any other insurance program does. It's going to cost more money the older you are when you buy it. That's really, I kind of talked earlier about the scope of the Social Security application, making the process almost foolproof, really. If you just tell us excuse me, if you give us the information about yourself and know when you're going to want to start, we're going to be able to process that and maximize your benefit. This is where we see mistakes being made and people, the anger. My uncle was very angry at Social Security, even though the misinformation was supplied by the bank when he was 67 years old. So we see a lot of, well-intended people like my uncle who didn't intend on making that mistake, that make that mistake. So again, just to reiterate this, because this is done outside the purview of Social Security, if you have an employer group health plan that is covering you, that is based on active employment from either you or your spouse, you can delay your enrollment to Part B of Medicare indefinitely, and then you can enroll using the special enrollment, okay? If that coverage is for any other reason, a COBRA plan, retiree plan, disability plan, that does not entitle you to a special enrollment. So if you don't take Part B, at age 65, you will be assessed a penalty and you'll have to wait until the general enrollment period to pick up Part B. I'm going to take a quick breath, Brody, and just see if there's any questions on that. There's usually some questions after I talk about that.
Give everybody a moment here to maybe collect their thoughts or put their questions in the chat, but there aren't any at this moment, John.
Okay. So if you go to the next slide, for folks who, I'm going to talk a little bit about mechanically how this works. If you are before the age of 65 and you're receiving a cash Social Security benefit, so you took your benefit, let's say at 63 years old, about 3 months before your 65th birthday, you're going to get sent what is called a Welcome to Medicare package, and we're going to passively enroll you to the program. So you're going to have a card that has Part A and B on it, and the starting date will be your 65th birthday. And if you want it, you just keep it, and your Medicare will start at age 65. If you're one of those people who is collecting benefits but maybe covered by your spouse, like my uncle was, when you get that Welcome to Medicare package, right, you're covered by your spouse, they're currently employed, you would refuse it, you'd send the Medicare card back in the envelope provided, and then they'll send you a new card with Part A only on it, okay? And you'd go with that until you are no longer covered under the employer group health plan. And in that case, you can then, usually I recommend about 45 to 60 days prior to the date of you losing your employer group health coverage, you should start the enrollment process for your Part B of Medicare. And the special enrollment process is very simple. You just complete 2 forms. The first is a CMS 40B, and the second is a CMS 564. And you complete those forms and either fax them or mail them into your local Social Security office, and they'll process you into Part B. They're very simple forms to complete. The 40B basically just requires a signature, tell us who you are and sign it. That's the enrollment form. And the 564 is filled out by the employer's HR department. That helps us determine whether the person was covered under that employer group health plan from the time that they refused Part A of Medicare. Okay, Brody, at the end of this, I'm going to jump over to the, just kind of giving you a note in case I forget, I want to jump over to the Medicare part of our site and show people how to get those forms and the easiest way to send them in to us, because there's specific instructions on our website. So at the end of this, I'm going to jump over to that. So what we're seeing also now, since the retirement age has separated from the Medicare age, we're seeing people file what we call Medicare only applications, meaning they're not requesting any cash benefits, but they are requesting Medicare. And quite frankly, some people are still covered under employer group health plan, so they're not even filing for Medicare Part B, they're just filing for Medicare Part A. And there seems to be, I'll call it a Social Security myth, There's lots of things that people believe about Social Security that are not completely true. And one of those myths is you have to sign up for Part A at age 65. Now, in most cases, there's no harm signing up for Part A. Quite frankly, you can get Part A. It doesn't cost anything. It's not going to help you much, but you can get your card and you can kind of get your foot in the door. If you are contributing to a health savings account, an HSA, you definitely don't want to sign up for Part A. The moment you sign up for Part A, you have to stop contributions to your health savings account. So over the past probably decade, as we've seen HSAs become more and more of a popular investment vehicle, quite frankly, we see more and more people who have made the mistake, file for Part A, and then 6 to 7 months later, they realize, oh gosh, I can't, they get a note from the IRS saying about can't contribute to the HSA anymore, and they come and they try to withdraw their Part A application. Okay, so again, you don't have to sign up for Part A. You can, if you want, right at age 65, even if you're still working, and you're still covered under an employer group health plan, but you don't want to do it if you're contributing to an HSA. Okay.
John, we have a question from the chat real quick here before we move on.
Yep.
And I'll just read that. I'm retired early from the federal government and was allowed to continue my health coverage into retirement. My husband will be 62 next year and plans to retire at the end of 2021. He is on my plan. What does he have to do about Medicare?
Well, he won't be eligible till he's 65. So, you know, at age 65, he should probably pick up Medicare unless he's covered under an employer group health plan. If there's any, see if there's a follow-up to that, Brody, make sure I understood the question correctly.
Sure, I'll allow Lori to follow up if she needs to there in the chat. I also have one more from Facebook Live, which Facebook Live got online a little bit late due to some technical difficulties. Barry asked, where can I find my full retirement age? If you just wanted to hit that again real quick, John.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, basically, if you were born, you can find it on our website. If you just go to the retirement tab, or you can even Google what's my full retirement age. But to answer the question, if you were born between 1943 and 1954, your full retirement age is 66 years old. If you were born 1955, it's 66 and 2 months, 56, 66 and 4 months, 67, 66 and 6 months. So it goes up incrementally by 2 months. And then anyone born after 1960, our full retirement age is 67.
Okay, and an additional question here overall, just back to Lori's follow-up. She said that her husband will stay on her plan. And additionally, another question just came in. I will be 62 in March. Can I apply now?
You can apply up to 3 months early. So, so in December, so in about 14 days. Just to nuance that a little bit too, you know, you can apply up to 3 months in advance. In fact, we can just flip the slide because we're going to get into applying for benefits. And there's really 3 ways to apply: online, by phone, or at our office. Now, the at our office option is not available now. If you're not aware, Social Security offices are closed for face-to-face contact during COVID. So your options to file a retirement application are either using the website or by contacting us, either at our 1-800 number or calling your local Social Security office. And we have a zip code locator online. If you can Google Social Security zip code locator, and based on your zip code, you can locate the contact information for any one of our 1,330 field offices across the country based on zip code. And offices do things jurisdictionally based on your zip code also. If you're going to file the application online, and quite frankly, if you have what I'd call a clean retirement application, meaning you're not my mother who answers yes to the question that I have a Canadian pension I'm also eligible for, that is going to take some additional time while we help her out with that. So if you're, pretty straight and clean, and you've already looked at your earnings and your earnings are all correct, and you know the date that you're going to go, it takes us about 15 minutes to adjudicate a retirement application online nowadays. So you can still file 3 months in advance, but what I've noticed is the customers that do that tend to get nervous, because what happens is when you file that early, your claim gets put in a holding pattern, and it still doesn't get adjudicated until the month that you're due benefits, or we call it the current operating month. That's just the way our system works. So a person who turns 62 in March, okay, just using that example, you're eligible the first month that you're 62 for the entire month. So you're eligible beginning in April, and then April's check is paid in May. The way Social Security checks are paid, they're paid 1 month off. So the people who are receiving their Social Security checks currently, in November, those are actually checks from October. So again, the person who turns 62 in March, their eligibility is April, and they're not going to get their first check until May. We also pay checks based on when your birthday is. So if you're born on the first 10 days of the month, you're going to get a check on the second Wednesday. If you're born on the second 10 days of the month, you're going to get a check on the third Wednesday. And if you're born at the end of the month, the last 10 or 11 days of the month, you're going to get the check on the fourth Wednesday. So the individual, again, using that March example, that April check is usually going to come on the second, third, or fourth Wednesday, which means that if you file your application in December, what will happen is we'll hold that application till around the beginning of March and not even adjudicate it until then. So what I've seen happen with those applications is people call us because they get worried because they haven't heard anything. You can also follow the process along in your My Social Security account. So you can kind of watch, when your claim gets adjudicated. You can watch it kind of in real time. Like the moment we release an award letter, that award letter, you'd be able to see it in your My Social Security account. So that's really the best way to track it, as opposed to trying to contact us over and over about the claim. So if I was advising that person, even though you can file that early, I probably wouldn't file my claim until mid-February or so. Now, if you're going to use us, meaning you don't want to do it online, which is fine, you're going to call us for an appointment. You're going to want a little more lead time there, because appointments are generally, it varies a little bit from office to office, but in Erie, which I think most of the folks listening are from Erie County, generally appointments are going to be 3 to 4 weeks out. So if you call us today, you're not going to get an appointment for 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, John, just a follow up here overall from Lori. So the situation was she retired early, keeps her health benefits. Her husband will be 62 next year, end of 2021. He's on her plan and will continue to stay on the plan. She had followed up with a question that she thought she had to be age 65 for benefits. And so she was just talking about the situation there, her husband's situation, as far as how they should proceed with their current situation.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding exactly which question I'm being, or what question I'm being asked, Brody. Can you clarify for me?
What I can do here, if Lori has the ability to come off of mute, and I will allow her to maybe ask the question at this point in time, just to make sure that we get some clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Hi.
So basically, I wondered about his applying. Does he still have to apply for Medicaid prior to age 65, even though he's keeping my health insurance as long as I'm alive? He'll be on my
Okay.
plan.
Yeah, so I understand your question now, Lori. Thank you for clarifying. You know, if you've got a promise that they're going to cover you under a primary health insurance for the rest of your life, and will he be if you die first, will he continue to be covered under your plan?
I don't think so. I think as long as I'm living, I can continue the plan and keep him on it. I do have survivor benefits on the actual cash portion for him, but I do not believe that is for the health insurance because you have to be the employed person to get that insurance. So as
Sure.
long as I'm alive, he's going to have it. But I'm 3
Right.
years younger than him. And
Right.
I just wondered, does he still apply, like you said, where you deny it if you have an employer coverage and then they still give you Part A, or how does that work?
Well, so you're in a unique situation. First off, you know, it's very rare in 2020 that somebody continues to have full health coverage past the age of 65. Most employers, in fact, being a federal employee now, the way our retirement works now is at age 65, our health plan would turn to a Medicare supplement. So, you know, we would sign up for Medicare, and then Medicare would supplement, or excuse me, our employer would supplement our Medicare benefits. If you've been promised, you know, by your agency, health insurance for the rest of your life, my first advice for you would be to try to live longer than your husband, okay? And then, you know, because he could, and I say that tongue in cheek, you know, but quite frankly, he could be put in a position, if you do pass first, where he's not eligible for a special enrollment to Medicare, right? Because he has the employer group health coverage, but it's not based on active employment. It's based on a retiree plan. So, you know, if, you know, God forbid you die first, then he doesn't have the coverage anymore. He comes to sign up for Medicare. He's going to be in a situation like my uncle is, where he'll be restricted to the general enrollment period, and then also pay a 10% premium surcharge for every year past 65 that he didn't enroll. So you've got some time, because I think you said he's only 62 now. I would certainly be asking, you know, those type of pointed questions to your health insurance plan, specifically what happens if you die, you know, about his coverage, and just clarifying the fact that they're going to continue to cover you as a primary, you know, under their primary employer group plan, not a supplement to Medicare.
Yep.
And that would be the best advice that I could give you.
I'm pretty sure that they said that I could continue it, and I don't ever want to cancel it, because once I
Sure.
cancel it, I'll never get it back. But I could put it in limbo, like without canceling it, and pick up the Medicare if I wanted to. Or I could
Sure.
use my insurance as my main insurance. So he just should still apply 3 months prior to his 65th birthday.
Well, I would ask your plan that too, because sometimes, like, I don't want an application for Medicare to upset the good deal you have with your plan, right? So because you have some time, he's only 62, I would ask that pointed question, you know, should my husband apply for Medicare? Yet will that, by him applying for Medicare, will that impact the coverage that we want to keep? And then the last question is, what happens to my husband's coverage, you know, if I pass, because we've been told by Social Security that he won't be eligible for a special enrollment. So, you know, he'd be in that general enrollment period, potentially being shut out for a while and also paying more for it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Brody, I think since we're running short on our time, and I'm happy to go longer if that's, you know, I'll leave that up to you, but let's just get off the slideshow, because really the rest of my slideshow is just examples that are online, and I'd rather, if you can, get to our website and then just display our website, and I'd rather give live examples as opposed to use slides.
Would that just be ssa.gov? Do you want me to just start there?
Yep. SSA.gov, absolutely.
Okay. Bear with me just a second and I'll pull that up. All right, John, you should be all set.
Excellent. So, you might see that, or everyone might be looking right at that red banner. It says right across the top of the page, what should I do if I get a call claiming there's a problem with my Social Security number or account? Brody, did you have any of those calls personally?
No, not at this time.
You're lucky, Brody. Yeah, you're lucky. I got one this morning. They're hitting everybody. Probably most of the people on listening have received one of those Social Security scam calls. We do not do business like that. We do not call and threaten customers. We do not, the language that they use. First off, if you did receive one of these calls, or if you haven't, I'll tell you what they are. It's a mechanical or robot voice. It's not a human. It's recorded. It's poor grammar. Sometimes broken English, and it basically says that they've suspended your Social Security number for criminal activity, and to please press 1 to connect to the Social Security Administration to get the issue straightened out. Now, most people let these things go to voicemail, or most people don't even answer them. There's, tens of millions of these calls made every day. Okay, and they're everywhere. And if you were to push 1, what would happen is you would get connected to a busy call center, and the call center would tell you, would continue this narrative about how you've broken some law and that your Social Security number is suspended. And then they would tell you to go to the grocery store and purchase gift cards at a certain amount, and then they would have you call this number back, and they would read those gift card numbers to the scammers over the phone, and then they would tell you to mail the gift cards to your local Social Security office to get your Social Security number unsuspended. I haven't run into anyone who's fallen for that, but there's, quite frankly, millions of dollars in loss across the United States reported with this scam. There's folks, there's some high-profile folks who got scammed. So that's out there, and I always mention it now in these talks. Spread the word to our most vulnerable, your parents, elderly relatives, folks who you think could be fooled by this scam. Just hang up on these people. They're not good people. And if you know anything about Social Security, we're slow moving. We've been criticized because we're slow moving, and we do things very deliberately. We never put anyone in a crisis situation where they have to make a decision now. We send letters when we want to talk to somebody. We don't cold call people, or in general, we don't cold call people. That would be a really unique situation. We generally reach out to people once they've initiated business with us. So we're not reaching out to you saying, hey, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? We react to you once you file your retirement claim. So again, that's something that's going on with our agency that has to be mentioned. I would like you to click, if possible, Brody, on the square that says Medicare enrollment.
All set.
Okay, and if you scroll down to the bottom, and it's the very third last blue bar, it says already enrolled in Medicare. So for folks who are delaying their Part B, they may have an employer group health plan, so they're going to delay their Part B. The forms are available in a PDF format here, and the instructions on how to send them. You can actually submit them right through an online tool, and that will go to a national processing center that will process them, or you can print them yourself, and you can fax them into your local Social Security office or mail them. I personally recommend either using the electronic portal or faxing them. The only reason why these Part B forms are time sensitive. So I mentioned earlier during the presentation to try to get these forms into us for 45, 60 days. prior to, the end of your employer group health coverage, they're time sensitive forms. So you mail them into us, we don't see them, we don't get them for whatever reason. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over my 25-year career with a customer who I believe them when they're telling me, when they say they mailed it in, and I also know that we don't have them on the other end. So sometimes things get lost on the way to us. By using fax or by using the online portal that's available to send those forms, you have an electronic trace that those forms were sent. So your fax machine will mark your copies that they're actually sent, and that's your proof that you sent them to us, just in case something goes wrong. Okay. If you can go back to the front page, please, Brody.
Okay.
And if you click on retirement, and I just wanted people to see, this is really, the place for you to go. It's got all of our retirement resources all in one place. And if you scroll down, you'll see the calculators that I'm talking about, the application. You'll see your My Social Security account. If you haven't done that yet, when people ask me, what do I need to do to get ready for retirement? Like, the single answer is create a My Social Security account. You want to make sure your earnings are correct. You want to check your earnings before you file for retirement. We learned today that we're going to pay you based on your reported earnings from your employer. So if your employer has reported your earnings incorrectly for any given year, it's a lot better to fix that prior to filing your retirement application than trying to fix that when you have, when you're in the midst of filing your application. And then there's also at the very bottom, all the quick links to the retirement publications we have, retirement forms, retirement FAQs. I'm looking at one of the retirement forms that I missed going over when I was talking about taxation. So, sometimes people who are going to have their benefits taxed will ask us to withhold tax directly from their Social Security check. So we'll pay the IRS taxes on an ongoing basis. And the way you do that is using that voluntary tax withholding form that's right on our website. That's a W-4V. You can also just Google W-4V, and you send that into the Social Security office to determine the amount of taxes that you want to have withheld from the benefit. So again, there's a wealth of resources out there on the website. So spend some time exploring it. Make sure you have your My Social Security account set up. Take a look at our calculators, take a look at the publications, and that's really all I have today, Brody, just to end it on time. But I'm willing to, however long you want to keep it open for questions, I'm willing to stay on.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, John, for the presentation. Just a reminder that all of these links that John just referenced on the SSA.gov benefits retirement page, if you participated and registered through Corey High Ed, you received an email with the link to the Zoom meeting. That will also have at the bottom of that, in that email, the links to these respective PDFs for more information. But the current, most up-to-date information will always come directly from the website. So be sure to record that website and reference it as much as needed. What I will do now is I will go ahead and open up the room. Anyone with additional questions that would like to come off mute is more than welcome to and ask their questions. But if not, we really appreciate you joining us today and look for this recording will be made available on our Facebook page. We will link that as soon as it converts and compatible for sharing. That's at facebook.com/Corey High Ed. I will put that in the chat. You do not need to be have a Facebook account to access our page. It is open to the public. There will be a link to where we will house this recording in full on our YouTube page that will be available here within the next 24 hours. So thank you so much for joining us today. I will open this up for any questions for individuals wanting to come off of mute, or you can also put them in the chat. If you'd like to come off mute and ask John a question, just simply click the box with the microphone to unmute yourself, and then go ahead and ask your question directly. Well, all right, we will conclude there with our presentation this afternoon. John, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all that participated on Zoom or viewed this presentation on Facebook Live. We really greatly appreciate it, and we wish you the great rest of your day.
Thanks, Brody. I appreciate it.